Hello, my name is Floyd Maxwell, justthinkit.com. This video is called Consequences of a Spring and Loop Theory, the Atom. The more important fundamental laws and facts of physical science have all been discovered, and these are all so firmly established that the possibility of their ever being supplanted in consequence of new discoveries is exceedingly remote. Michelson, 1903. This can be restated as, the more dominant theories trying to describe the fundamental laws and facts of physical science have all been agreed upon, and these are so firmly locked in that the possibility of their ever being supplanted in consequence of new discoveries is exceedingly remote. Thank goodness. When in reality, it is the nature of the scientific process that alternate theories are developed in order to account for new observations. Ed Stone, Voyager Project Scientist. Where to start? Spring and loop theory began life as a quest to figure out how gravity, an attractive force, worked across empty space. The incompleteness and even abject lunacy of other theories meant something new was needed. Spring and loop theory was the result of holding out for something better. COASALT 7, the atom, finds itself trying to answer the same question, but in the nucleus. How does a proton attract an electron? The conventional physics explanation of positive attracts negative simply cannot be what is happening at the lowest levels. For one thing, if it was true, the nucleus and the electron would attract each other until they touched. But not only do they not do this, they increasingly strongly repel each other. So, positive attracts negative until it does the opposite? But who am I to express such blasphemy? Science progresses when a good theory is superseded by an even better theory, and the most direct route to building a better theory is to be confronted by data that simply don't fit the old one. Sean Carroll. Lineage. My father began life with nothing. The British Air Force brought him everything, including training with the early instruments found in planes of that era. Flight instructor was the title on his discharge paperwork. Going on to work in process control industries, Jace was always one to take the first 10-year perk and move on. Ever the self-made man, he knew that happiness came from a position of independence and freedom. Eventually, he found himself tasked with creating the British Columbia Institute of Technology Instrumentation Department. Interesting times followed, but once again, tenure-rejecting Pop took early retirement and bought an orchard. Every scientist knows that the real fascination of research lies in the totally unexpected development, the revelation that tears the fabric of supposedly sacred theory. Julian Schwinger. Home life. Growing up was everything a kid could hope for. Trees to climb, sports to play. Our basement stored gear for every sport and 6 bicycles. And 2 parents that loved and supported us completely. The joy of working together as a family came together around the massive oak kitchen table. Jace had his peasant wine, Mom made homemade bread, but dinner conversations were invariably state-of-the-art. A science lover till his last breath, my father would start off with an innocent question or comment. My genius older brother would nod sagely or weigh in with a new consideration. I was just happy to share the same table with him. Einstein's gravity will never be proven wrong. Brian Koberlein. The quality that dominated Einstein's personality was a very great and genuine modesty. When anybody contradicted him, he thought it over, and if he found he was wrong, he was delighted, because he felt that he had escaped from an error, and that now he knew better than before. Otto Frisch. Formative years. Luckily, my father never pushed me to get good grades. Memorizing was particularly frowned upon by the former flight instructor. I think Dad enjoyed thinking more than anything, so shunning the regurgitative approach was just good form. Gradually it became clear to me that theories were liberating. A knowledge of the historic and philosophical background of science gives independence from prejudices from which most scientists are suffering. This independence, created by philosophical insight, is the mark of distinction between a mere artisan or specialist and a real seeker after truth. Albert Einstein. Orchard life. In 1975, the family moved from the city to a small orchard. Sounding like a great idea, it quickly dawned on everyone that there was a lot of work to be done. The tractor, a 1939 Ford Ferguson, had a hand crank. There was a well in the basement. and 350 fruit trees needed year-round care. The crippling of individuals I consider the worst evil of capitalism. Our whole educational system suffers from this evil. An exaggerated, competitive attitude is inculcated into the student, who is trained to worship material success as a preparation for his future career. Albert Einstein. Missing a leg. The vehicle of an orchard is the ladder, that has just 3 legs. Yikes! Naturally, we had never seen such a beast. Up to 14 feet tall, the intimidation factor was substantial, but in proportion to our age. The youngest couldn't wait to start climbing and eating. A ladder, any ladder would do the trick. Let's go. It is in fact nothing short of a miracle that modern methods of instruction have not yet entirely strangled the holy curiosity of inquiry, for this delicate little plant, aside from stimulation, stands mainly in need of freedom. Without this, it goes to rack and ruin without fail. Albert Einstein. The don'ts. Our parents were way ahead of us. They had seen the hills in the orchard and had already tried climbing the trees. Visions of us falling were enough to prompt a series of rules. Number 1, we were barred from using the 14-foot ladder. Fine with us, couldn't lift it anyway. Number 2, we had to take it easy. That was easily ignored. Number 3, we had to bear the indignity of parental inspection after each ladder placement. Rats, a non-maskable interrupt. One can organize to apply a discovery already made, but not to make one. Only a free individual can make a discovery. Albert Einstein. Eureka! Then I discovered a better way. It involved a simple principle. Number 1, looking through your ladder from the step side. Number 2, position yourself so that the 3rd leg is evenly spaced between the 2 step side supports. Number 3, if the 3rd leg is vertical from that viewpoint, you're golden. And that was it. There is no money in a new theory, especially one better than an old one. The United States has a government controlled to a large extent by financiers, the mentality of whom is near to the fascist frame of mind. Albert Einstein. Hard sell. Once realized, ladder setting became a trivial exercise, even on the steepest slopes or narrowest gaps into the tree. I would just throw the middle leg forward and then pick up and move the other 2 legs until the 3rd leg was centered and vertical. Except my parents didn't get it. Ladder setting would take 5 seconds. Parental inspection would take 2 minutes. All the while, I would be explaining that I knew the ladder was safe. Wasted words. Fast forward 40 years. Today, we have one seriously complicated universe, or maybe an infinity of them, or a very simple universe. Particle families, spin, color, flavor, shape-shifting neutrinos, or springs and loops. 4 forces, 5 if you count quintessence, or just variations on 1 force. It must be remembered that there is nothing more difficult to plan, more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to manage than the creation of a new system. For the initiator has the enmity of all who would profit by the preservation of the old institutions, and merely lukewarm defenders in those who would gain by the new ones. Mignon McLaughlin. Solar System Science. Spring and loop theory has replaced the planets orbit the sun because space is curved with the universal matrix of springs is contracted by matter loops. Subatomic system science. The same concept holds true at atomic scales. Electrons orbit a nucleus because they are attracted to the nucleus is replaced by electron spring loop systems follow nucleus curved pathways amidst the springs. Collision avoidance redux. COASALT 5 gravity said that collisions do not occur because each spring loop system, think of each like a ball of duct tape that has been used as a soccer ball for a week. It ain't got no stickum left in it. The 2 spring loop systems still attract each other by contracting spring space, but do not stay together because there is too much fluff, i.e. springs, stuck to them, to the point where they have no sticky left. In fact, this is the most powerfully repellent fluff in the universe. Hence the reason that the electron-nuclear repulsion goes toward infinite strength as the 2 get closer together. Is this the dawning of? This is where things either get very clear and simple, or the hey whatabouts come to town. A theory is the more impressive, the greater the simplicity of its premises, the more different kinds of things it relates, and the more extended its area of applicability. Albert Einstein. Hey, what about all those different quarks? Hadrons, baryons, mesons, and muons, bosons, and fermions. Of all the communities available to us, there is not one I would want to devote myself to, except for the Society of the True Searchers, which has very few living members at any one time. Albert Einstein. First stage, two types of stuff. There are particles, and there are bumps. An electron is a particle. A photon is a bump. A proton is a particle. An X-ray is a bump. A muon is an unstable particle. A wave is a series of bumps. As a boy of 12 years, making my acquaintance with elementary mathematics, I was thrilled in seeing that it was possible to find out truth by reasoning alone, without the help of any outside experience. I became more and more convinced that even nature could be understood as a relatively simple mathematical structure. Albert Einstein. Second stage, admit defeat. This might hurt a little bit, but we know a lot less than we think we do. It is as if we have been busily cataloging smoke signals. We assumed that once we had enough different signals, we would be able to crack the code and actually know the mind of smoke. In reality, we needed to discover the message behind the signals. Nobel laureate David J. Gross says physics is in need of a revolution. Third stage, models and sims. Once you have the message, the smoke no longer matters. The smoke of our universe is being propagated by springs and loops of energy. Once we know that, the next step is to build a feature-complete simulation. The money spent by television documentaries on blinding explosion graphics should about cover it, or 0.1% of the LHC's operating budget for this year or next. Fourth stage, sayonara quantum mechanics. QM is a placeholder. Like dark matter, it is ignorance named. Probability explains nothing. Can't know is a cop-out. Yes, there is a quantum world. No, quantum mechanics doesn't explain it. A physical theory can be satisfactory only if its structures are composed of elementary foundations. Albert Einstein. Picking a basis. Engineering calculations begin with a basis. One thing the atomic basis is not, the nucleus. Presently, we think a hydrogen atom is a flea in the center of a stadium with another flea going around the outside of the stadium. This is a wonderful analogy and intuitively reasonable, as it roughly mirrors the planets orbiting the sun. All that it leaves for us to figure out is what the other 99.999% is. This man loved mysterious nature, as a lover loves his distant beloved. In Faraday's day, there did not yet exist the dull specialization that, through horn-rimmed glasses and arrogance, destroys the poetry. Albert Einstein. Giving the Standard Model a chance. To the question, what's the energy density of the vacuum? John Baez gives 5 answers. Number 1, very close to 0. Number 2, infinity. Number 3, enormous, but finite. Number 4, 0. Number 5, not determined. Geometry is the most ancient branch of physics. Without it, I would have been unable to formulate the theory of relativity. Albert Einstein. Giving Planck a chance. Planck's constant defines our basis, the spring size. This is the true atomic unit. The central mystery in quantum theory involves Planck's constant. Its value has been calculated from measurements using different quantum phenomena. The question is, why do the different methods agree? Why is the grain size of our slightly fuzzy universe a universal constant? Edward Speer. Touring the Planck world. Planck gives us the building block size. What else do we know, or can we reasonably infer about the atomic world? That it must be geometrical. COASALT 6, 222 answers, stated this. This paper elaborates. Describing the physical laws without reference to geometry is similar to describing our thoughts without words. Albert Einstein. Components of an atom. Spring and loop theory creates an atom with just 2 components. Given the complexity of the Standard Model, it can be a bit daunting to try to visualize an atom in its entirety with such minimal building blocks. But consider Einstein's thought on the subject. Although it is true that it is the goal of science to discover rules which permit the association and foretelling of facts, this is not its only aim. It also seeks to reduce the connections discovered to the smallest possible number of mutually independent conceptual elements. It is this striving after the rational unification of the manifold that it encounters its greatest successes. Albert Einstein. Spring and loop theory is irreducible, both in scale and in number of components. This doesn't by itself make spring and loop theory correct, but it does make it the simplest possible theory of everything. Reminder: relativity, number 1, breaks at endpoints. Number 2, doesn't work with quantum mechanics. And number 3, doesn't unify the four forces. Quantum mechanics is, number 1, incomplete at best. Number 2, not fundamental, opting instead for a probability approach. Number 3, could be called a best guess approach. And number 4, could also be filed under correlation is not causation. We need what chemistry has: a simple model of the things we study. Given that physicists study everything, we need a simple model of everything. Enough with the particle smashing. Enough with looking for the oldest galaxy or the heaviest black hole. And take the CMB and Big Bang out to the shed for a good whooping. Look beyond any theory that breaks. There simply has to be something better, because life is not broken. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Nikola Tesla. First, the fleas. The nucleus and the orbiting electrons are the easy part. Let's define them first before looking deeper. The universal matrix of Planck scale ultra-energetic springs is everywhere. Anytime there is a matter loop, there is automatically a spring-loop interaction. Spring-loop systems behave differently than the springs-only universal matrix. Specifically, spring-loop systems contract spring space, or, in old-fashioned terms, mass bends space. First and second fleas. The electron is a spring-loop system. The nucleus is also a spring-loop system. The difference between them is more scale than anything else. As a simplification, think of quantity of mass as number of loops. Cloning Barnum and Bailey. So what brings the electron and nucleus together? Spring and loop theory says it is exactly the same force that brings planets and the sun together. Gravity. Gravity warps space, curving it, causing a circular orbit to be the straightest distance between 2 points. Newton's laws are wrong in the world of atoms because things on a small scale behave nothing like things on a large scale. Richard Feynman. Not an exact copy. Spring and loop theory says gravity holds things together at the atomic scale as well. As an analogy, think of the atomic nucleus as the sun and the electron like the planet Mercury, or maybe a comet. Where the analogy breaks down is when it comes to contact. House rules, no rough stuff. A comet can hit the sun, but an electron can't hit the nucleus. Why the difference? Scale is the key to conceptualizing this. At the solar system scale, Planck scale springs are vanishingly small. Other than being part of spring-loop bent space, they have little to no effect on planets. When we say that we understand a group of natural phenomena, we mean that we have found a constructive theory that embraces them. Albert Einstein. Nuclear battlefield. At the Planck scale of the nucleus, springs are a more substantial influence. Springs not bound to a loop are still mainly space benders, but they are also more noticeable randomizers, causing those quantum jitters, though spring and loop theory prefers to think of them as cement vibrators. As evidenced by the less than 1 part in 100,000 variance of the cosmic microwave background, spring energy is highly uniform, not random, just independent and on an extremely small scale. Springs bound to loops, i.e. subatomic particles, are like Abrams tanks on the battlefield, rough riding but rarely dismembered. Tank ballet. Spring loop systems are tightly bound, high-test steel. Spring loop systems have springs on their outer layer that are partially bound, repulsive armor. Spring loop systems are self-contained, quantum tanks. Spring loop systems are pseudo-random with a common purpose, autonomous units within a galactic fighting force. When two theories are available, and both are compatible with the facts, then there are no other criteria to prefer one over the other, except the intuition of the researcher. So one can understand why intelligent scientists, cognizant both of theories and of facts, can still be passionate adherents of opposing theories. Albert Einstein. The rest of the squadron. In comparing the known properties of protons and neutrons, spring and loop theory imagines that a proton simply does a better job of attracting an electron, possibly by being less repulsive. Given that a neutron decays to a proton plus an electron, Rutherford's intuition that a neutron was a neutral double consisting of an electron orbiting a proton is similar to what spring and loop theory thinks as well. The difference between them probably comes down to how the springs interact with the loops. Two different ways to knot a rope, or alternate handholds on a merry-go-round. Stability is harmony. Atomic stability can also be surmised. There are regions of the solar system where things are stable enough to support a planet, and others where things are not. Classically defined as the electron degeneracy pressure, the Standard Model decrees that electron, or in general fermion spin, sets a limit. Spring and loop theory says it more simply. Subatomic particles don't like to be crowded, and some more so than others. In living through this great epoch, it is difficult to reconcile oneself to the fact that one belongs to that mad, degenerate species that boasts of its free will. How I wish that somewhere there existed an island for those who are wise and of goodwill. In such a place, even I should be an ardent patriot. Albert Einstein. Politics already has enough spin. Rather than a property of spin, it is more a matter of how springs interact with loops. Like the difference between a neutron and a proton, different subatomic particles have different quantities of loops, i.e. relative sizes, different ratios of springs to loops, i.e. relative stability, and different degrees of attachment of the outer layers of springs, i.e. relative degrees of reactivity. In the lowest electron orbital, 1s, the nucleus electron system is only happy with 2 electrons. A third one doesn't enter because A. Increased electron-electron interaction immediately drives one of them away, or B. The degree of spring curvature prevents a third from entering 1s in the first place. Diminishing effects. As the atomic orbitals increase, their distance from the nucleus grows. Low Earth orbit supports a smaller number of satellites than geostationary orbit does. But at some point, the orbits are so distant that edge effects easily break up the party. Where the Earth-Moon system is a single atom, most materials contain atoms numbering in the trillions or quintillions. Springs are both ultra-energetic and ever-present and are attached to each atom. At the highest orbital levels, the jostling with other atoms can easily drive electrons away. With the outer electrons gone, the stability of the nucleus is affected, and it splits into 2 or more smaller sizes. Quantity does not make up for quality. Albert Einstein. Quantity of LHC collisions recorded does not make up for the lack of quality in the Standard Model or quantum mechanical theory. Turning away the talent. The Standard Model endlessly accumulates particles in families sorted by properties. It also endlessly accumulates conundrums. Spring and loop theory continues to discard unneeded parts, simplifying and unifying. But not to worry, those parts are not truly gone. They'll be CGI'd into place at a later date. When I was young, I found out that the big toe always ends up making a hole in a sock, so I stopped wearing socks. Albert Einstein. Finished work is for subtrates. Spring and loop theory is just a framework, a model, a notion, a thought. It is not trying for a famous equation, nor ingratiation, just simplicity and something that doesn't break. I still struggle with the same problems as 10 years ago. Albert Einstein. Ode to freedom. The building won't rise quickly. It'll take 20 years or more. Young bodies, if not young minds, will be needed to build each floor. Older people who have scarcely anything to lose ought to be willing to speak out on behalf of those who are young and who are subject to much greater restraint. Albert Einstein. Demo suites now showing. Space is available. Couple of footnotes. The first is a longer quote from Edward Speyer's 6 Roads from Newton. Quantum mechanics exists in at least 4 different formalisms: Schrödinger's wave equations, Heisenberg's matrices, Dirac's postulational approach using complex vectors, and Feynman's path integrals, i.e. least action. In each of these quite different formulations, H is introduced arbitrarily, empirically. Planck's constant enters into almost every quantum calculation. Sometimes it cancels out and remains hidden, but it is always lurking nearby. Quantum electrodynamics, QED, centers on incorporating H into formulation of Maxwell's equations. If the value of H is taken as 0, the equations of classic physics appear. That is, quantum phenomena approach classical cases as H is reduced in value. This proposition is called the correspondence principle of quantum theory. But the ultimate significance of H, or whether it even has such a significance, remains a mystery. Many physicists think such speculation is a waste of time. H is there, use it. Don't ask foolish questions. But some of us insist predictions without explanations are not enough. There must be more. The other footnote is to elaborate that a neutron decays to a proton plus an electron antineutrino. Neutrinos continue to challenge spring and loop theory. Best guesstimate? The various neutrinos are spring-dominated systems. Wildest guesstimate? Neutrino liberation is one of, if not the, direct cause of the expansion of the universe.